Hello everybody. Well, I've kind of wrapped up my turkey season, kind of moving on, trying to get some broadhead sharp and maybe get a chance to do a little hog hunting. I've still got turkey hunting on the brain. While it's still on my mind, one thing I wanted to talk about was some scenarios that we go through. And one is when we're hunting tough gobblers that really don't want to cooperate. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the difference between a hung up gobbler and a gobbler that just won't come. Now, let's say it's the early season and the woods is still real open, so you're moving in on this turkey and he's on the roost where you can see real good, so you're going to probably have to hang back. You might have to hang back as far as 200 yards, maybe 175 for the setup. Otherwise, you might get too close, he may see you and end that hunt. So you're set up and you start calling to the bird. Or it could be a situation where you don't find the turkey till 8, 9, 10 in the morning gobbling, and you set up. The woods are real open. You set up 140, 50 yards from the turkey and you start working him. Well, after a while, it's apparent that he's closed the distance. He got really close. Maybe you can even see him out there, glimpse him through the woods at 80 yards, but he won't come any closer. He's just gobbling, walking back and forth. Or maybe you can't see him. Maybe the terrain is so steep and hilly, maybe he's over a hill from you, but he's gobbling. You can hear him back and forth. It sounds like he's going this way and gobbling and going back this way and gobbling, when in fact he's probably not covering that big of an area. He's probably just walking maybe 5 yards this way, gobbling in this direction, then he turns around and walks back and he gobbles into this direction. He's throwing his gobbles out. So it sounds like he's working back and forth about 40 yards, when in fact he's probably just back and forth about 10 yards. Or he may be turning his fan to you and gobbling the other way. You hear people say, well, he'd go the other way and then turn around and come back. Well, all he's doing is just turning his fan to you, gobbling the other way, then turning back and gobbling towards you. It sounds like it's going back and forth about 40 yards. He's probably actually only walking about 5 yards. That's pretty typical of a hung up bird. He won't get any closer, and you know, different things could have him hung up. Well, there's a set of tactics to use on those hung up birds. Well, let's look at a gobbler that just won't come. It's kind of similar to hung up, but it's not hung up. Say you're going like 9 o'clock in the morning, you hear one hammering. So, I mean, he's gobbling good. You think all I got to do is close the distance, get a good setup, I'll have him dead in 10 minutes. Well, you do that, you get a good setup. Maybe it's late season, the wood's kind of thick. You get up to within about 80 yards of him and you start working him. He's gobbling back at you, everything's sounding good, everything you think you're fixing to kill him. Well, after a while, he goes silent. Well, if you're using a shotgun, you're probably going to want to be kind of facing, if you're a right-handed shooter, you're going to be facing a little bit to the right. You want to get ready for him because you think he's coming in. If you're a bow hunter like me, and that's one thing I hate about bow hunting, is you think the turkey's coming from this direction, well, you got to turn and get ready like this. I mean, you're not facing the subject, you're turning, you're ready, you know. He may show up any second because he quit gobbling. Well, after a while, maybe 30 minutes pass, he gobbles right back where he was all morning. And this may go on for 2 or 3 hours. Normally, about an hour, and then he'll get quiet again. Well, what he's doing when he gets quiet, all he's doing, he's sitting out there on that pretty spot where he wants to be, and he's gobbling, and a hen walks in. A lot of times you'll hear them, their gobbling will intensify. Well, that's when he's seeing or hearing the hen out there 40 or 50 yards, and he'll intensify that gobbling, and she'll come up there to him. She gets up there to him, and he starts, you know, getting real serious about breeding her. He's going to probably go silent. So you're not hearing him for an hour. And then once he gets done breeding her, she walks off, he'll start back gobbling again. Well, with this turkey, he's not even closed any distance on you. He's just doing what he's doing. He's out there in his strut zone where he wants to be. So another hour or 2 passes, he gets silent again, you get ready again. And maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes passes. He gobbles a quarter of a mile to your right, way on off in another strutting zone. That turkey has never made any attempt to come in your direction. He's ignored you. He's wanted you to come to him, he's done nothing to come towards you. Unlike the hung up gobbler, which might have closed 100 yards. So there's different tactics for different birds. Now back to the hung up gobbler. That's the advice that most people give, is they give you advice on how to deal with a hung up gobbler. And it's a lot of tactics you can use on a hung up gobbler. Most of the time when you're dealing with two people hunt together. I don't hunt with anybody. I kind of think turkey hunting is best as a one-on-one game to give them a good fighting chance. But if you hunt with somebody, you put them out front, you call back here. He comes up to his hang-up spot, the shooter out front kills him. Now, as a solo hunter, I can do that myself. All I got to do is go up and set up my blind where I need to think I can call the bird up to, go back behind the blind, make a few calls, then shoot on up and get in my blind. I can do that. I have done that before. I did that in Georgia this year on a bird that liked to hang up, and I killed him. Well, that works. There's other tactics that work real well. Now, one of them that a lot of people claim works real well, I've never had it to work, is the hen going away. Which you get up, you've been working this bird, he's hung up, he's in a spot that you can't see him, and you just pull up and you start walking away, clucking and yelping, and you just go maybe 100, 150 yards, then you turn around and run back up part of the distance and sit down. He thinks the hen's leaving him, and he'll come in. I've never had that tactic to work. I've heard it worked. I've never had it work. Another tactic that works on hung up gobblers, and I've had this work almost 100% of the time, and it's kind of a deal that I invented. I call it the Jake invasion maneuver. I've been sitting there working that bird. He's came in. He's hung up out there. He's out of sight. Maybe not jumping up and down and waving your arms out of sight, but he's out of sight enough that you can belly crawl straight away from him, and maybe get on your hands and knees and crawl a little bit and then pop up and run. You want to get 100, it's kind of like the hen leaving, but it's different. You want to go back about 100, 150 yards, and then you want to start Jake yelping. And you want to move your way back to where you were set up pretty quick. You just Jake yelp all the way in. Well, to him, he's standing out there, he's hung up, and it's just like if he was a hunter hearing a gobbler coming in, he's getting excited. This Jake's getting closer and closer to him, and you Jake yelp all the way up to where you've been sitting, crawl back in the blind. In my case, I hunt out of blind, I bow hunt, crawl back in the blind where I've been hen yelping, and then I start fighting, purring. So it sounds like to the time that's hung up, it sounds like a Jake came in and got to where the hen that he'd been hearing yelping was, and then I start fighting, purring. So maybe he thinks, well, there was a gobbler there, this gobbler came in, and now they're fighting. And I've had that work just about 100% of the time. It'll break them when they've been hung up. It will break them out of that hung up mode, and they'll come right in. Now another tactic, let's say he's hung up and you can see him out there. Well, one tactic that works real well, if you got a fan with you, I keep a inflatable fan with me with a head on it. I'll pop it out from under my blind. If I can see him out there 80 yards strutting back and forth, I'll work that fan. He'll eventually catch a glimpse of it, and boom, most of the time he'll come right in. That works. Now back to the gobbler that just won't come, which is totally different than a hung up gobbler. It's totally different from a hand up gobbler. A hand up gobbler is different from a hung up gobbler, and it's different from a gobbler that won't come. A hand up gobbler is just a gobbler that just wants to be with the hens. It's like a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. That he's totally different. You have to work him different. I'll do a video on him, but for now we're going back to the gobbler that just won't come. He's out there gobbling in that spot. He hadn't made any movement towards you at all. He's done nothing to show that he's going to close the distance, and the next thing you know, boom, he's a quarter of a mile away in another spot, gobbling his head off again, trying to gobble another hen up. What am I going to do in that situation? Well, this turkey is in a way just as easy to kill as a hung up gobbler. The first thing I'm going to do is move from where I'm sitting straight up to where he was. I'm going to move up, and I'm going to find that little spot, that little hole that he liked to be in before he left and went to the next hole that he likes to be in. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna scope it out. And if he's gobbling, 150, 200 yards away in his other, I may just set up in the area he just left from and see if I can call him back to it. I've killed a few that way. That works sometimes. More often than not, it don't. But, it's something that you can try. But at least you learn that spot that he liked to be in that day without spooking him. And it'll come in handy for the next day. He's in another spot. So once you get done, calling from the spot he just left from and he's gobbling in the other spot, you may want to walk towards that other spot and reset up, because it's kind of, to me, those gobblers that work these different spots, it reminds me of a lot like a golf course. They're on this green and they move to the next green. They don't ever get out in the rough, which is a lot of times a place you're set up in, because you don't really know where those little fairways are going from green to green. He never goes out in the rough. He goes from one green to another green using a fairway. So you walked up, you found that spot he was just at, that green, and he's in this other one down here gobbling now, and you can work your way towards that other one, and you can see, hey, this is how this turkey moves through the woods. You can see the paths that he takes from one green to another, and you learn that second one. If he moves off that second one and goes to a third one, you move up and you locate that one. Find out that strutting zone. You want to be real specific, find exactly where he was strutting. Now the next day, you're going to move in and you're going to hear him. He's going to be in one or the other, one or two or the three of those greens. He's going to be doing the same thing he did the previous day. And you just want to get right in one of the spots he was the previous day. And, as close as possible to where he's gobbling. And, I'm going to call to him. I'm not going to assume that this gobbler won't come to my calls, or he's scared to come to my calls, or he's avoiding me. I'm just going to assume that I wasn't in the place he wanted to be, and I'm going to call to him. Now, if this goes on 4 or 5 days and it's obvious he's avoiding me, then I might just, the more I learn about him, I may just set up in one of his strutting zones and just wait him out and kill him without calling. But that's a couple of different scenarios. The gobbler that won't come, the gobbler that's hung up. There's 2 different gobblers, 2 different ways of hunting them, and you got to be real specific and target each one differently. And if you do that, you'll come up with a lot more dead birds in the end of the season. I had a good season this year. Ended up with 9. I dealt with some hard birds this year. Ended up killing all the hard birds I dealt with, and it worked out good. You just have to identify the bird, know what you're dealing with, and attack them appropriately.